Welcome. We are in another episode of Manufacturing Growth Talks. I'm your host, Dan Burgos, and today I'm joined by someone that I respect and admire quite a bit. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. And, as you know, we interview colleagues in the manufacturing sector, executives that are leading businesses to profitable growth, and we're here to learn from their experiences, hear the stories, the trials and tribulations, some of the challenges they face, and then glean some of the lessons from their journey. Today, I'm joined by someone that has quite the background. I think you'll be very impressed. He's been in service in the military, and he has, had a very interesting career thus far. So today, I'm joined by David Dieter. David, welcome.
Thank you, Dan. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'm so excited to dive in. And again, I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your journey and the things you've learned so far. So
Right.
for people joining or listening in that are not familiar with your journey and who David is, can you share at a high level kind of what your background's been? What have you been involved in thus far?
Yeah, sure. I'll start back in three areas that I'll touch. I'll talk about a little bit about personally, my background as an individual, professionally. We'll touch on that as well as education and some additional experiences that maybe not so traditional. But personally, I was born in Madison, Wisconsin, so go Badgers. I'm a Midwest type of a guy. My parents both grew up on dairy farms in southwestern Wisconsin. So work ethic, hard work, work 7 days a week, that type of thing. Continuous learner, and that all that stuff is DNA from my parents that were passed along to me. But my mother was a business executive at Wisconsin Bell, if you go way back before AT&T consolidated, and my dad was continued to be in the dairy farming business, but also very interesting was a beekeeper. And my uncle and my dad both had a couple thousand beehives when I was in my 7, 8, 9 year old days, and I used to be out in the bee yard with them. So it was a lot of fun back then. I learned how to climb trees and fall out of them too. So very interesting times, very good memories. I stay active. I like golfing, a little bit of fishing, traveling, sports. I enjoy country music and also blues music. I like a diversity of music, and I prefer to listen to it live than being able, but I'll take what I can get because it does help the creative juices and the positive vibes to flow. So I have three children, two boys that are one is 19, one is 18, and my youngest is a girl. She's 14. Professionally, first and foremost, I'm an engineer. I grew up having an affinity for numbers. Very quickly, I could think things out. Typically, I was first one done with the math tests. I was weak in other areas, like English, but math was my area. So, so I love math. I love problem solving with numbers. I always find that challenging. It's like a mystery. I have to, to figure out what's going on. So but I'll always be core. I'll be an engineer first, more of a mechanical side of things than the software or electrical, but I've dealt with all three. Diversity of positions. I work for various size companies in varying industries. And some of the industries that I've been able to be an executive in were commercial vehicle on and off highway, linear motion, motion control, and various size companies as well. As I've worked for companies that were 3 billion in annual sales, corporations, and I've run one of their corporations, one of their businesses, as well as I've worked in smaller companies, and the position I just left was a president of a company that was a mid-sized company in the motion control manufacturing sector. Well-rounded leader, business leadership, entrepreneurial, engineering, sales, program management, and battlefield tactics, which, speaking of, former captain in the Illinois, Wisconsin Army National Guard, company commander, and served in Afghanistan in 2008, 2009. Ultimately, though, when it comes professionally, I'm a team player and a lifelong learner, and I'm really passionate about continuous improvement. So the important thing about continuous improvement is that you achieve goals, and it's great to celebrate, at the end of the day, what's next, right? Take that 15 minutes, celebrate, but know that things have to continue to evolve in life because the things around us will evolve continuously as well. Education wise, started off in biology, finished out that, but a little bit of chemistry as well. But then I went back and focused in engineering and then earned an MBA as well. So well-rounded in many areas and quite the journey so far.
Yeah, that's definitely quite the journey, man. And first, thank you for your service,
Thank you.
especially being active and deployed. So, okay, let's start from kind of the professional the beginning of your professional career. So, since you've been we'll start where it makes sense for you. Tell me what those early days, what were you thinking? What were your goals? I don't even, I think you didn't, you may or may not have started in manufacturing, I don't recall. But tell us about that and where you went. Where was David's mind at that time?
Yeah, sure. When I first graduated school after my engineering degree, and I was in the civil environmental sector at the time, the market in that industry, I went out and designed highway bridges. And I just had a passion for highway bridges at that time. And again, engineering is a way of some passion still is and always will be. But I was in the sector of designing highway bridges as well as custom homes. I lived out in Denver for 3 or 4 years, and I was working on log homes as well and doing some customization. Really enjoyed it. No, but life has a tendency to take you in many directions. And so I was in the civil and environmental industry up until the mid 2000s. And at that time, I started an MBA part-time off on the side while working full-time. But I was also in the Army National Guard. And so I got activated. And that's one of those things, one of the stories that happen that to people are the detours in life that you did not plan. And that was certainly one of them. And so I was gone for a year, and while I was gone, a lot of the responsibilities that I was involved in were handed out, and it was around 2008, 2009 economic downturn when I came back. So there was not a lot of work when I came back. My employer was very generous about keeping me on, but I wasn't really doing a lot of things. And so, I mean, I was honest with my employer and I said, listen, I appreciate it. I could stay here and I appreciate that things will turn, but listen, I've got to do something. I've got to do something more. And we worked out the idea that I would find something at my pace, and which I did. And that's when I actually changed sectors and changed. I went into project management, but not in the civil field. This was distributed control systems with Emerson Process Management, and worked as a projects manager, working on putting in a distributive control system in the largest wastewater treatment plant in the world in Chicago. So I was working with a variety of engineers there, but at that time, those engineers were not mechanical; they were electrical and software, which is very interesting. So again, you have to quickly adapt, sometimes to change. You have to
Yeah.
understand your landscape. And that journey lasted about a year. And when I found another opportunity, got recruited away in being an engineering manager with Navistar, with
Oh,
International Trucks.
let me stop you there for a little bit because
Sure.
about something you talked about. So, can you talk about um, a little bit about your experience in the military? How did that affect your leadership style? What did you learn that it
Oh,
was kind of a wake up call for you? I'd love to hear some of the lessons from
yeah.
that experience.
Yeah, I went through officer candidate school. I was a captain, and I'm skipping a lot of things here, but there's a ton of lessons I learned through the military. Number one, first and foremost, leaders eat last, and there's a book out there that talks about this. I was looking at it the other day, at least the framework of it online, and it talks about the fact that when you're a leader, you put your people first. In the military, the culture's around it's not a collaborative necessarily culture. It's more around the authoritative, right? When you give an
Hmm.
order, you take that order and you execute on that order. And the reason why that's so important is you don't have time to collaborate. You don't have time when the bullets are flying and IEDs are going off. You don't have time. You have to go to muscle memory. You do operational planning. You do battle drills and all those stuff. And then when an order is given, everybody has to shoot, move, and communicate at the same time as a team. And one of the things about it all comes down to people. And when you're leading people, leaders leaders eat last, which that means at the end of the day, as a leader, you're generally putting your people's well care, looking out for them, setting them up for success. Because ultimately, if they're successful, you'll be successful, and we will be successful. So, for example, at any time that we were going through child line or anything like that, I'm the last one to eat. I'm making sure everybody else goes through and gets done. Also, I'm the last one to go to bed. I'm the first one to get up, so you get less sleep. But you're
Right.
always there, making sure that you're visible, you're present, and you're the first one. You're showing an example, and you're also showing that you care and you're authentic about that. Those folks will run through brick walls for you. And that's really important, not just in the military, it's very applicable in the business world as well.
That's so interesting, and that so true. In conversations with other folks, I've always heard the phrase leaders are not supposed to build followers. They're supposed to build leaders that turn around and build additional leaders. How do you, so the question is, how do you get people that work on your team that are also leaders to function and embrace that mindset and actually, display it and embody it for other people to see and adopt as well? Have you been successful at being able to hand off that and embracing that mindset?
Well, I think a couple of things are important. If you have a management team or a leadership team, the folks that are on that by nature must want to lead people. And if they're not, then you've got a mismatch of what I would, call drive, call that inner core of what is important in those positions is to ensure that you're taking care of your team because each one of your functional managers as a business leader has a team of people below them. So one, they've got to have a passion to be a leader too. So that's kind of a core thing. If
Yeah.
those folks don't have that, it's hard to build upon the foundation because that is the foundation ultimately. So a couple of things that I typically do. Number one, I do a ton of coaching. And I'll find the right people, and you'll have a team of people in business leadership, a P&L leadership role as a president, a general manager, so forth. You'll have anywhere between four and as high as 10 at times, depending on how horizontal you can be or more. But the more you get diluted. But the bottom line is that that team is so vitally important to the success of that organizations and the goals that you set out for yourself and alignment of everybody else, getting them and coaching them. So how, bringing up those folks, you identify you're going to have stronger members than others, and you focus on a couple of things. One, as a group, doing coaching with them, and I'll point out things like leaders eat last. It's just a classic example that I'll share with my leadership team. That this is something that a lead, this is what leaders do. And second of all, I live it, right? So I lead by example, right?
Exactly.
I'm the one that's either first in the room or last to get out. I'm the one that leads by example. And so a couple of those things, you got to have that foundation that I want to be a leader too. I've got the willingness to be coachable, and that's very important. And and
Yes.
and and so when you find that, those are a couple of things that are base elements to really develop your leadership team, and to get them up and being able to turn around to their folks and lead them in the same way. So I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I also do team coaching. And I will mentor sometimes when somebody's presenting. I'll take them off afterwards. Here's what went well. Here's some things to think about and how to do better. And we also, the other things that I've done is doing lunch and learns, having everybody in the leadership team
That's great.
present something on a monthly basis that they want to share with the rest of the team as well. So it's it's interesting to the various ways that you can bring leadership to the rest of the leadership team. So
I love that
those are just a
approach.
few examples.
Yeah, no, I love that approach. And so I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into that. So how do you identify those folks, the right folks to focus on? Because I want to, for the benefit of the listener of the conversation, how do you identify those folks? And then, so you already partially answered the second question of okay, how do we create that culture of coaching? I'm assuming I know you've been involved in turnarounds. Sometimes people can be a little defensive or yeah, resisting to your leadership at the beginning. So how do you find those folks and how do you open them up to that so that you start creating that positive change?
Yeah. Well, there's a There's a couple of things. Number one, the ones that that are what I call their more high potential folks for leadership, they're the ones that are asking questions, wanting to learn more. They're coming to you offsite, asking, or offline, asking you questions about this or that. So the enthusiasm, their engagement, that's the first indication that's so natural to feel that it's easy. Then if they've got that base element, that leadership is something they want to get stronger at. It's a core purpose of theirs. Those are key folks because it's important at that point to take the time and to invest in them, both a one-on-one as well as engaging them at the team level when you're together. Those are the folks that there's a synergy. In other words, if you've got somebody who has a drive to want to be a leader, and then you sit down and you work with them with a coaching plan, what are your strengths and weaknesses, things like that. You do an evaluation of them, you find out what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, and then you start getting a coaching plan with them. That's a 1 + 1 = 3 or more situation.
Exactly.
And so that's accelerating, and that's really where I like to invest my energy because I know that the return on that energy is going to be high because of that real core element. Hey, I want to do this. There are other folks that are going to be on your team, especially ones that you'll inherit, that might not really care. They could be in different seasons of their career, are willing to change. And what's important there is not to jump to assumptions. Your perception, we all have perception. You have a perception of me, I have a perception of you.
Sure.
uh, Bottom line is, don't always adopt perception, adopt perspective. So sometimes you can have somebody on your team that you think your perception tells you, I'm not feeling it with them. But you have to get out of that and you have to actually get perspective and put yourself in their shoes, ask questions, remain professional, unemotional, try to peel back the onion, ask the right questions, and try to understand what they're seeing from their perception. You got to get their perspective of their perception. And if you find out that maybe there's a roadblock there that's arbitrary or something that you can remove and you can get them into that coachable zone, then you work with them. But then there are the folks that just aren't going to change. They don't look at it. It's just that, there are just a certain percentage in the normal distribution curve. If you understand that, that's the human
Yeah, of course.
population, right? You're going to have that slice down at that lower end of that bell curve. They're not going to be team members. And they could be, in fact, they could actually be cancerous. They could be counterproductive to where you're at. And
Yeah.
sometimes you have to take that step to say, hey, listen, this team's going in a direction that I'm not sure that you're on the right bus for this direction that we're going. And there have been times I've had to replace folks on the management team. But really, philosophically, that's an easy decision to make. I know it isn't for the individual, and it's hard and it can be contentious. But at the end of the day, you got to look at the greater good of the team and the
Yes.
greater good of the organization. And the reason is why is if you have a weak link on the team, or if you have somebody who's a rock thrower, or is just rejecting the direction you're going, it's going to drag everybody back. It's also going to require everybody to take extra load to probably fill in the hole or the lack of production of this individual in order to try to raise the team level output. So you really got to understand the dynamics of a team, where the high potentials are, and growing their leadership as an individual and collectively as a team, who can be coachable and brought into with the right attitude, who's not got the right attitudes and could be counterproductive and cancerous to the team, and you need to do something about that and do it very quickly. So that's kind of
That,
a general philosophy.
yeah, no, man. Thank you so much for giving that explanation. And I love what was don't, not perception, but perspective. I love that quote. So definitely going to be putting some of that out there. Um, so a lot of times when we go to manufacturing companies, I think everybody gets this, but it's not easy to always execute. For instance, I've seen companies where people that fall into that latter category, that lower rung of the normal curve, that could be, resistive, passively aggressive, and so forth, and they're not dealt with. Sometimes I don't know if it's skill, I don't know if it's courage from the leaders, very experienced people. How do you get past that? I mean, I think it comes naturally to you, but I think if you can offer some advice on how do you get past that, where you say, no, I've got to build a culture, I've got to, keep in mind the greater good for the business. How do you overcome whatever things? I don't know if you've ever had that also, where it's that person or I don't feel up to the task. How have you been able to overcome that? or what do you suggest for people that may be
Yeah.
struggling with that?
So number one, when the last business that I ran, I was president of the company, and we had 260, 270 people, and so there's rungs of management, supervisors down to folks that are out on the floor doing the manufacturing, doing the value add every day. I mean, those are the key folks. And to be
Sure.
honest with you, when you first come into something, a business like that, you've got to do skip level questions. You got to go around and talk to everybody, and you got to do it in a sense and do it very quickly. And you have to do it in the sense that you're asking and talking one-on-one on individuals that are right out there uh, doing the hardcore work and delivering the value every day. You will find if you ask the right set of questions, the commonality of where your weaknesses are in your leadership capabilities and your supervisors and your next level management team, and then the leadership team. You've got to skip level down. First, you got to discover who are the folks that are not necessarily strong in their leadership skills or strong in the right attitudes. And you cannot tolerate having folks that are either siloed and they're doing, are at war with other things, or they're treating their people bad, and they end up being again, to go back to being rock throwers, and they're counterproductive to moving a culture in a better direction. And sometimes you have folks that actually have had folks in the manufacturing environment that create fires on a regular basis. I call them arsonists, just because of the fact that it's a lot of these manufacturing folks, they rise to the occasion on a regular basis, and they do the right things, and they're pedaling hard, and they're trying to do the right things, and some they get a thrill off of that. And
Yes.
some of those leadership and some of those supervisors actually create that to try to get juices flowing, and that is so counterproductive. That's exactly what you don't want. You don't want to have a bunch of firefighters out there. You want to have people that are they're installing fire prevention and sprinkler systems so that you mitigate things before they become a fire, right? So you got to get that. But if you do have folks that are counterproductive, that don't agree with what's going on, what direction of the company's going, a better culture wise, and are not good folks necessarily leading the people with the right attitudes, you got to do something about it. You can retrain them. And then some of them will come around that. You can reassign them maybe into some better roles that are suited for them, maybe as individual contributors, or you got to replace them. But you got to do the 3 R's fairly quickly, because, and I'll be honest with you, the last place, so a couple of places I've been at, but the last place we improved, we had high turnover when I came on board. We took that turnover down by 47% within 2 years of making sure
Right.
how, finding the right folks who are on board, promoting and developing the right people, retraining, replacing, and reassigning in order to get the right people in the right roles that are on board with the direction of the culture where it's going. So yeah, it has a big impact, and you have to get down into the onion, so to speak, and really find out what's going on. Do not just rely on what you're being told by your management team. You really got to get down in there and do it very quickly. And that's something I learned from the military, by the way. The first 3 days that I was a company commander, I was down working with folks, just every single soldier, spending a little bit of time. What's your job? How, who's your family? All those types of things. You do that things, and respect will come quickly. Not that you're doing it for respect, but you're doing it because you care, and you're doing it because you're doing fact finding, trying to find out what is working well, what's not working well. That way, you can look to see what you're going to need to do to make it better, make it go, get into the direction that you need it to go.
So, yeah, I love the retrain, reassign, replace framework. That's good, easy structure to remember. So, when you get to the place where you have to have those tough conversations, how do you mentally prepare for that? Some again, like I said earlier, right? Sometimes it's courage. Sometimes people feel they don't have the skill to have that conversation, or they just shy away from confrontation. Can you give some advice around that when you get to the point where you've done that and now it's time to execute and have the tough conversations?
Yeah, I think the reason why I mean, I'm not a psychologist at the end of the day. I don't pretend to be.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's very natural for people to want to avoid confrontational of conversations. And and it comes with there's a couple things. One is a mindset. I mean, this thing up here called the human mind is, in my opinion, has a great ability to achieve the greatest achievements in the world, the ones that advance the world, but it also has the ability to create artificial barriers. It does. And it's just like, and I was talking to somebody the other
Yeah.
day, and this is a philosophical from my own thing and looking back in life, is that if, I'm not an alcoholic, but if, alcoholics go through a 12-step program. The first step is to recognize you're an alcoholic, right? And if you never do that, the rest of the steps are a waste of time. And it's the same thing here. Always question yourself, is this a valid fear? Is this something I'm creating because I can't I don't want it. It's scary. But guess what? Doing things that you're uncomfortable with is growth. It's the first step of growth. So having difficult conversations, one, educate yourself about how to go about this in the right way, right? I mean, there's plenty of self-development books out there on trying to structure through having a conversation about something that's sensitive that some folks are not going to take in the right direction. So it's how you frame it. But at the end of the day, you've got to have a process to come into these conversations, and you got to have confidence to have. So one process, learn about a process that works for you. Keep it simple, keep it short, and also keep into the audience that you're speaking to and how they're going to react. How do you frame that discussion so that you keep the emotional level down? But the purpose of the discussion, why is it important? It's not just about them; it's about the team. And you've got to overcome what the mind's going to create for you is fear. It's fear. I don't want to do it. But that's exactly why you should do it because you're going to grow from it. And not only that, if you don't embrace it and do something about it, the greater team suffers. So it's not just about you. It's
Yeah.
not just about the individual you have to have the conversation with, but you got to remember the context of which this is about. And that was what drives me to overcome that stuff. It's like, okay, I get it. I mean, I don't like to have this conversation. I know I have to do it. That's leadership. That's the courage. You got to
That's it.
overcome that. And you got to understand it's most of it's up here that's holding you back. And if you adopt the attitude, if I can overcome that hurdle, I'm going to grow from it. So only because of repetition have I been able to really get comfortable with it. It's not easy. It's not easy for the individual. It's not
No,
easy for you to
no.
go through it. But at the end of the day, you need to go through it. That's the courage of leadership to get it done because it's for the greater good of the team and the direction you want to take that team.
I agree. I can tell you sometimes when I've had to have those conversations, and you dread it to some degree, but later on, things come full circle, and some people come back and thank you for actually making the change because it was the right thing for them, for the business, for the team, and they ended up in a better place because of the change that you kind of forced them force well not they forced them but that they created the situation so that we had to do that. So thank you, that's great advice. Okay, so kind of going back to your story, I'm glad we kind of took a detour, a lot of lessons there. So you were getting into Navistar there, and you were just talking about when you walked into that project manager role, and you had engineers, but some were electrical and mechanical, so a little bit of a different crowd. How were you able to integrate yourself quickly? Can you talk about how did that go for you?
Yeah, one of the things that the military does teach you by on purpose is adaptability. The ability to put yourself into a new role, and you got to quickly acclimate and make a difference, right? And the military does that all the time in the training of the officers. That's exactly what happens. And in the roles that you get assigned, you go in as a platoon leader, and you're in that role for about 2 years, and then they'll promote you, and you're constantly moving around. And one of the things it does teach you is the fact that, okay, plop me down in something new for the first time. So what is the process to go through that? I mean, acclimate very quickly is important, especially in your weekend you don't have knowledge in. And in fact, a number of times, I mean, I went into the commercial vehicle from projects management in Emerson Process Management to Navistar as being, working on commercial vehicles in an industry I've never been in. So you got to quickly learn your team, learn their strengths and weaknesses, clear roles and responsibilities, and you got to learn the industry very quickly, right? And learn what it is that you need to come on board. So after a while, for me, it's just because of repetition of being in the space. You got to understand the current landscape. You got to strengthen your weaknesses, right? And you've got to make sure that you start to build that team collaborative team atmosphere and environment to work together. First, initially within your team, but also as that team interfaces with other teams that are within the organization as well. And if quickly, within 90 days, what is it that I've got for a vision of this team? Working with this team, what's our mission going to be? What are our goals going to be? And working with them individually again to help them develop as individuals to grow their skills and skill sets, especially the ones that are eager to do so. But then collectively as a team, how do we raise our performance, set goals for ourselves, and a roadmap and get us there? So as an individual, you quickly got to adapt, understand, get the landscape, ask the right questions, learn as much as you can about current state, but also learn about things you don't know, like industries, commercial vehicles. I mean, how do you break down an 18 wheeler and getting down to what's different types of cabs, all types of things that go into different engines, exhaust systems, and stuff like that. Quickly understand that, and so that in the marketplace who our competitors are and things like that. So um, it's just to me it's natural instinct by repetition. But at the end of the day, adaptability is one of the most things I think in life is because the only thing that's constant in life is change, right?
It's
So being
change.
adaptable is one of one of the most important teachings of being a leader and or an individual just to thrive and enjoy life.
Yeah, I talk to clients, and I get this question every so often, like, why do we go through this phase where we fix everything, and you come back 5 years later, and there's still more problems? There's always something, and I always tell them you have to keep in mind that by nature, business, it's a living and breathing thing. And so markets change, customers change, products change, individuals change, new employees come in, you outgrow another facility, and so on. So change is but a constant. And so that's why you always have to have something going in terms of improvement, because it's adaptability. At the end of the day, it's about how do we stay focused and stay relevant and effective and efficient in a changing market and an environment. So tell me about when you were there, some of the challenges and some of the things you guys were able to accomplish together at Navistar in your time there.
Yeah, Navistar was at that time. We Navistar as a company or a corporation chose a after treatment technology that they put a lot of money and effort into that didn't turn out to meet the requirements of the regulatory requirements of the government for the amount of nitrous oxide that was coming out of the engine exhaust. Most every other of their competitors were going down a different path of using DEF, which was an after treatment type of way of eliminating that. Well, Navistar made a strategic blunder there, and what it did is it impacted the entire organization as the engines and everything that they were making were going in the wrong direction. So they had to immediately do an about face and all hands on deck to get engines and go back to a supplier who they told that they didn't need engines anymore and asked them to supply engines in the interim that were going to meet the regulatory requirement as they were building out new engines that could do that could utilize the DEF after treatment in order to meet strategic. So it was a huge upside down, turned the whole company upside down. I mean, you're talking almost 10 plus thousand employees that are now, everybody
Wow.
has to, scramble. And, executive leadership had certainly had their chores on figuring how to motivate and get everybody focused on one mission. And they did a fairly good job of really putting together a core team cross-functionally to focus on that engines. And the rest of us were continuing to move some of the real core things that are important to our areas of responsibility, but then to supplement to focus on supporting that team so that quickly, I think it was within, and it's not easy. I mean, it would probably take multiple years, 4 to 6 years to get this done. I think they got it done in 12 to 18 months. But they did a really good job. It's when you make a huge strategic blunder like that, that they motivated, allocated resources, did the proper planning, and really focused on one mission, and that was to get engines that could do that the after treatment that was going to work. And we had a lot of bumpy rides, and a lot of folks that had to leave the organization in order to try to get things right. And it was a very chaotic time. But you know what? I learned a lot from it, and had really good people, and we achieved the mission. I did exit the organization on my choice. I was recruited away to go into sales for the first time, and I've never been in sales. So that'd be
Oh
the
man,
next
I
story
can't
if you
wait.
want me to
I,
share that one.
yes, yes. I did want to draw out. Sounds like that was a major undertaking when the company had to make that about face. So, can you share a handful of lessons? If we had time, I would ask you about some of the challenges, I'm sure, but can you draw out some of the lessons that you learned from that experience of that about face that company had to do at that time?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson, the one that it's the most one that I've taken away from it, is to prioritize it very quickly. What are the highest priorities? And so, number one, they came up with a system is, air. You have to have air to breathe, right? And then water is the next thing you need to have to survive, and
Right.
then food. So air, water, food. So anything that was air, that's where you needed to be focused on. Water was important, but it wasn't a like to have or a nice to have or anything like that. Water was something that you put on basically parked. It's a here are the things that we were working on that's going to be parked. So you really narrowed down to new initiatives that were going on, became air. And so the prioritization of things they needed. So that was important what the executives did. And so they came up with a framework to do that that could be explained across the entire organization. The second thing they did that was great communication plan, getting that out there and sharing and identifying and sharing those air programs, air initiatives, and how that related to your team got done very quickly. So being able, one, to be able to come up with a framework that you could communicate it, two, structuring the communication to get everybody understanding and aligned to that higher purpose and drive, to support those air and then water. But then the thing that's really important when you have that many people or any team is that what's the purpose of this? Why is this important to the organization? Why is it important to you? Why is it important to your team? Why is it important to our customers? Right? Shareholders, everybody, it's all stakeholders. So the why is really what had to really drive that motivation and inspiration that can be fleeting, and you have to communicate that and regularly provide updates on a regular basis. And I think the executive team at Navistar did an excellent job in doing all those things.
Gosh, I can I think I don't remember the number you said, but it was in the thousands of employees to coordinate a massive shift and focus and a big one, right? Because it was almost the survival of the business unit. Sounds like it was just a big undertaking. Thank you so much for sharing those. So now you transition to sales, another somewhat shift in your focus career wise. Tell me about that. A lot of people they feel ops is their wheelhouse. Sales is something they would never get involved in. Why and how was that like for you to make that change?
Well, number one, I think I just love being with people. And I love building relationships, authentic relationships. So I've never been in sales, and really had an opportunity to do that in previous roles that I've been in industries. Or you play a role in those industries in the civil world. I'm not out doing new business development. I'm actually the guy that's doing the engineering in the background, right?
Right.
Uh, in Navistar, I was an engineering manager. I'm not out. I mean, that's such a big organization. You got a whole sales fleet out there, people that have been trained to do all that stuff. But I did have the opportunity to get into sales. My boss actually at the time at Navistar asked me if what I'd be interested in doing. I said I want to do something different. And so he said, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "You know what? I want to try sales." Why? Because I've never done it before, and I'd love the idea of working with people. And so that's one thing I always run to the firefight. I don't run away from the firefight. It's like let's go, let's
Love
try
that.
this out, right? Because
Yeah.
I think you do things you're uncomfortable with, you learn from it, because you grow from it, from an individual, you grow from it in so many different ways. And so he actually knew a president of a company called Aaron's Controls that he a friend of his, and so networking is important in life too. I could go off on that one, but at the end of the day, networking had got me an opportunity to interview with this company that is a supplier into the commercial vehicle world, which is Navistar's playground, and so knowing that I've had experience in being inside the walls of one of the big OEMs, and that helped me get an interview. And so I went over and interviewed with this company, and then I got an offer the next day. And so I joined, and boom, now I'm in this company who is, a lot smaller, a smaller company. There's 150 employees in this company, right? So it's a small company. And there's three or four or five different salespeople in this company. Now I'm one of them, never been in sales. So, but I adapted very quickly. Again, now what do I need to know? What's the current landscape? And so I educated myself as much as quickly as I could on sales and in the industry, and their core capabilities and core product line. I got assigned the largest account that they had, as well as number three and number five. So I had one, three, and five. For some reason, the rest of the salespeople are kind of shy away from number one, and I was like, I'll take it. So anyway, so it was one of the greatest experiences I ever had in a career stop in a position. Was over that 3 years I was in that sales role. I ended up being the salesperson of the year within a couple of years of being there. I got the
I
inaugural
saw that.
salesperson of the year award for the division at the time, and great success. And I think the core takeaway for me and why I was successful there was when I played this role where I worked with their main customers, and I needed to ask the right questions, learn what they were looking for, and then turn around to the organization and work with the rest of the organization to go, here's what we need to do to serve our largest customer, and here's why it's important, and then work and build the relationships internally as strong as I did externally. And if you do that, uh, then you have that ability to really influence the high quality outcomes. And so I was very successful at being able to do it, and I love doing it. And so it was one of the best stops of my career was during those 3 years. I loved it.
Sounds like it, man. I'll tell you, it's one thing to make a stop in sales, but to be successful to the point that you're awarded, salesperson of the year, that just speaks kudos to the effort, the adaptability that you learned, and kind of being successful. To me, some of the things that I would add to what you said was, and I'm learning this myself, right? Being empathetic, right? Understanding people, really meeting them where they're at, putting yourself in their shoes, which sometimes it's so difficult for us because we have our own agenda that we're trying to drive, and we have to, as you said earlier, with being a leader, right? Leaders eat last. To me, being in sales, it's almost like you're a leader, like you're trying to help people, and that's another one. You to lead people is to serve people, and so learning what others are trying to accomplish, how can you help them, and then turn around. And at that part, I hadn't thought about from salespeople building relationships because you're almost facilitating this interaction or this transaction between the people that build the thing and engineer it and so forth, not diminishing their efforts, of course, and the people that are trying to use that conduit to accomplish a greater goal. So amazing. So now you got sales under your belt. What was your next stop? Where do you decide to go next? And what was that experience like?
Yeah, I correct you. One thing I'll add on to you say is, yeah, I functionally, or I did get sales under my belt, but we all sell all the time.
Oh
And then, of
yeah.
course,
Oh yeah.
and I'm not trying to correct you, but always be selling. I guess successful in a career, even gauging my success, a lot of it had to base on the fact that, influence and selling. In selling your perception, your perspective, whatever it is, to sell an outcome, really. I mean, selling is important to do at any role that you have. And so
Yes.
I want to emphasize that. I mean, before I move on, selling I mean, good salespeople sell features, whether if it's a product, a service, whatever it is. Great salespeople sell outcomes. Here's what it's going to look like at the end. Here's the best salespeople do all those, but they also sell that feeling, that positive feeling that you had in that last interaction that you had. That one thing that the other person on the other end is going to remember, it's not maybe not the features, a little bit more on the outcome. They're going to remember that feeling. and it's something that I always kind of talk about when it's not just actually because it's your primary role, but it's also the same thing you'd be thinking about from any perspective, any seat that you're in any function, especially if you want to be successful. Those are some of the core things. And so some of the things that I've learned about in life. So anyway, sorry for the diversion, but I wanted to
No,
share
no,
that.
no, no. I get it. I get it. And I agree with you. We are selling at all times, whether it's ourselves, our company, our team, on a vision, and so on and so forth. 100%. I think once you go into the function of sales and you live it and breathe it every day, I think you get a an enhanced appreciation and perspective for that profession. It's what I would say. All right, so man, exciting times. So, what was your next stop career wise there?
Yeah, so while I was doing that 3 years at Aaron's Controls, we did an acquisition. We got acquired by Curtiss-Wright Corporation, and we got part of a group. It's called the Aaron's Williams Group, and we grew from one company to four companies, basically. So we got, acquired into a group of three other companies. We became four companies during that time. So you remember I was talking about at Emerson Process Manager. I did projects management, and I did project management when I was in the Civil War. I was also a certified PMP, professional management, a project management professional. And so I had that always in my background, the experience of working with people in multiple functions in order to put a project plan together and steps. And so I had that background. It's very successful at sales. During this reorganization, near the end of it, we also had a leadership change. New leader came in, and new leader asked me to take a different role, pulled me out of sales, uh, become the director of program management, and that's responsible for all projects, project management, all the new product development, new product introductions, um, uh, facility improvements, or anything that had to do with the project, whether it was with products, services, or facilities. And there was two companies in the U.S. And I was also partially responsible for two companies that were abroad as well. And working at building out a whole new function for the first time. So putting together a charter for the function, what's the vision and mission of the function, bringing and hiring and assembling the teams of the function, putting in a new process in place, as well as new product development processes, and then standardizing that across the groups, as well as standardizing training. So it was a lot of hard work, but very, very rewarding. Got a good team pulled together. I was also still managing executive level at top customers. Got out of sales, now became a direct executive to executive sponsor to the former accounts that I had. Was also responsible for kind of leading the site at Aaron's Controls at that time as well. So I had multiple things and wearing a lot of hats, and it was very rewarding. Learned a lot of things that I did not learn. I learned on the job a lot of things about supply chain, a lot of things that were more around manufacturing, and it's a very rewarding opportunity. It's quite successful at it, I guess, because I was there for a couple of years, and while I was there, I was also doing a general management training with Curtiss-Wright Corporation. So my time came to take the next step, and
Can I ask you
sure.
before you move on from that? Can you talk about the contrast between inheriting a team and building a team from the ground up? Lessons that you learned from that experience.
Yeah, I did inherit part of this team,
Oh, you
but I
did.
also
Okay.
had to build it out too. You when you inherit a team, you got to say, well, here's what we are today, right? And here's our mission, our vision. Here's the things that we're responsible for. You got to get all that outlined as well, and you have to understand what your demand and supply is, right? So how much work is coming in, and there's a lot of work coming in at first just to build out the basics of a function that had never existed before. It's really like a PMO function, a project program management office, and so you've got to really understand where you're at and where you need to go in the short term and where you need to go in the long term. Got to understand what the demand of the organization is asking from this group, right? And initially, it's to set it up. Second of all, it's like there's still work that needs to be done. There's new product development that was ongoing that we're bringing in and incorporating into a team that may have not been involved in that project before because they were part of the acquiring company at a different site. So you have to work at bringing the team together. You have to start to standardize things, and you have to understand what the demand of the organization on projects and versus your resources that you have, and
Right.
making sure you have the right resources. So it's a balancing of a lot of things, and you have to build that roadmap on where do I need to focus first on,
Yeah.
and what steps that need to happen before the next step has to happen. And you have to have milestones of things you have to do. Again, it's just like, project management. It's the same thing when you set up something new. It's like, here we are, current state. Here's where we need to be at the end state, so to speak. Here are some milestones that along the road that we have to do, and we have to, you have to do all these things together in a world that's asking you to do your job at the same time. So it's a lot more challenging to build something from the ground up than it is to inherit something in general. I'm not saying that's
Yeah,
always the
of
case.
course.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it's easier to do it from the grounds up. It depends on the scenario, the current state of the situation. If it's so dire, maybe it's better to blow it up and redo it. But in general, at least I've found that it's easier to grab something that's already in motion, somewhat successful, and get it on a better track than it is to start from scratch. So they're both
Yeah.
very challenging depending upon situation, but the latter one, building something from the ground up in general, so takes a lot more work.
All right. So let me start winding down because we're almost out of time. But um, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing. We didn't go through your whole journey because I know you had a lot of lessons. We unpacked a lot. I hope this has been insightful for people. So, can you share a principle or a rule that you abide by, or something a mentor shared with you that's always kind of kept you centered in your leadership philosophy and helped you be successful in every role you've made? And you may have already shared this, but just wondering if there's something like that in your arsenal.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I think the one that really comes to mind for me is speed is everything. And I don't mean it in the sense that that you're cavalier in your speed in achieving things, but the decisiveness and speed are important. I mean, take action. It's a speed versus risk kind of an assessment at time, but the quicker you go, the quicker you learn.
Sure,
And
I
that's
agree with
that,
that.
and that's my philosophy is that not to the point where it's too risky, but at the end of the day, don't. Progress is better than perfection, and I know a lot of people have heard those things, but the truth is that the faster you go, the faster you learn. The faster you learn, the faster you adapt. The faster you adapt, the better you become, and the better you become, the quicker you achieve your goals.
Yeah.
And so I'm a bias for speed and action over perfection, and I it's highly important to be able to learn as you go. So launching maybe something a little bit premature than you'd like to is a good way to get voice of customer back. All right. So maybe you don't launch it to the entire world. You launch it to a select group of customers you're good at or know you well, and you let them know that that's the state. Yeah, listen, this is not 100%. It's not there. We're going to work with you. You're going to be
Yeah, I like
value
that.
created for you. It's going to be value created for us. We're going to work with you five. We're going to get this product out. You're going to try it. We're going to manage the risk as we do it, but we're going to learn what's going right, what's going wrong. We're going to make adjustments back here. And we'll take a leap. We'll take a leap of improvement, leap of quality. And I think that's important to ensure that you're decisive. You take action, you learn from the action, you adapt from the action. And once you adapt to the action, you become better and become faster and become better and become faster and become better and faster. And that's one of the key takeaways. And I also think that decision making is vitally important. When you have to make a key decision, an important decision, a couple of things you need to ask yourself first is uh, how much time do I have to make this decision? And who do I need to talk to next? Because you don't have all the answers. So these important decisions, depending upon how much time you have, that's who do you need to talk to next? You have that time to start collaborating with other people to get different perspectives,
That's
uh,
so,
to
yeah.
leverage their experience, their expertise, and also there might be a part of the solution, so they get better understanding of what's going on, and you also get commitment from them. So that's also managing the head and the heart of a team too, is to work with your team to try to come up with these high quality decisions. Take as much time as you can because the closer you get to a decision point, the more information that you learn, the more information that you learn, the more that you can be accurate before you have to, take action. So utilize as much time as you can on making important decisions, talk to as many people as you can on getting perspective and ultimately their commitment if they're going to be part of that implementation on whatever you're going to do. So a couple of key things is speed, bias for action, decision making, ask yourself a couple of questions. How much time? Who do I need to talk to? Collaborate to ensure you have a higher probability of a high quality outcome.
Man, thank you so much. So, in closing, if people want to get a hold of David and learn more about you and connect with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you and kind of connect?
LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest thing. You should be able to find me. And I'd be happy to just, just make note that you learned about me in this podcast episode, and be more than happy to engage. I just I love people. I just do. I love people. I love engaging. I think that's what ultimate purpose in life is really to engage in positive ways with everybody around us, and leave an impression that's positive as well. So I'm happy to engage anybody that's interested. Just shoot me a note on LinkedIn.
Sounds good, folks. So we'll end it there. If I mean, we got a lot of insights from this conversation. If you heard David, if you want to reach out to him, and if you'd like to be a part of this, and you'd like to be, you have a story to tell, you have lessons to share, please reach out, and would be happy to have a conversation with you. So until next time, thanks, David, for taking the time, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Dan.